Hello, hello. Welcome back to U.S. History. We're going to start Lecture 2 today by looking at page 400 in your textbook. So hopefully you have your notes printed out or pulled up somewhere you can see them and follow along. But page 400 in your textbook. Now, we talked about how the World War I, how it started in 1914 with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the Allied powers and the Central powers taking sides, but the United States had not joined. Later on, we would join the Allied powers, but at first we stayed back. Woodrow Wilson, the president at the time, did not want the United States joining in the war. He wanted to practice a form, and we've talked about this earlier in earlier lessons. He wanted to practice a form of isolationism, just focusing on a nation itself and not getting involved in foreign affairs. But there were several reasons that caused America to be interested in World War I. Number one was economic ties. And so if we look at our notes here, starting Roman numeral 2 and slide A, reasons for American interest, economic ties really caused America to be interested in the war and also caused us to lean toward the Allied powers, not just being completely neutral. We were biased toward the Allied powers. Also, one of the reasons why we were so interested was because of Allied propaganda. Propaganda, defining that kind of off the top of my head, is a type of advertisement or poster or form of media that causes you to think or tries to push you to think a certain way. Now, here are some examples that I was able to find from your curriculum. And this is a British one. This is a British poster. Most of the propaganda items back then were posters or in the newspaper. Today, we see it online. We see it on TV. We see it in magazines. You see it on billboards. But there is propaganda out there that's still used today. But these are older forms of propaganda. You can see here, who's absent? Is it you? This is a British form of propaganda where when someone is looking at this, a young man, he's thinking to himself, am I not doing what I need to do because I'm still at home? Do I need to go and fight? This poster is trying to get people to feel patriotic feelings and to want to go to war and fight for their country. Children were even targeted with propaganda. This one says, little Americans, do your bit, telling them to eat certain types of cornmeal, but nothing with wheat, because it says here, save the wheat for our soldiers. So they're saying, do what you can. Maybe, don't eat what you normally eat, but you're doing it for a good cause. You're saving wheat for the U.S. soldiers. This one right here, together we win. This is trying to create a unified patriotic feeling with Americans. And you see that it kind of uses three different types of men who are supporting the war. You have those who are fighting in the Navy. You have those who are staying home and that are working in factories, producing for the war effort. And then you have drill sergeants who are staying at home but are preparing men for battle. These are just different forms of propaganda that we see. And of course, the American propaganda really started showing up after we joined the war, which we will talk about here in just a second. So we talked about how economic ties, propaganda, were causing Americans to kind of feel biased toward the Allied powers, but also German atrocities, unrestricted submarine warfare. The Germans had come up with this invention where we see them today, but they were able to float underneath the water. And they were able to move and attack ships that were on top of the water and not be seen. The Unterseeboot is what they called it. We call it nowadays the submarine. But they would just take the first letter of Untersee, the U, and they would call it U-boats at the time. And so Germans began sinking ships that were bringing supplies to Allied powers. And America was one of those countries. In fact, we were actually trading with both sides. We were trading with England, with the Allied powers, and we were trading with Germany from the Central powers. And so England, they really did not like America trading with Germany. They would actually stop our ships and make them go to British ports to check on the items and goods and kind of take them before they could go to Germany, causing some negative financial issues for the U.S. But Germany, they looked at us trading with England. They didn't like that either. And they set up these zones in the ocean, in the Atlantic, and in the North Sea as well, that they said, if you sail into these zones and we believe you're carrying items that can help Allied powers, we will sink your ship. Well, one of those ships happened to be the Lusitania, which you should remember from your reading. The Lusitania was sailing out of New York Harbor, and the German foreign ambassador that was in New York told American authorities, do not let Americans get on the ship. If they do, this ship has the possibility of being sunk because we believe that there are items to help England on board. Well, Americans kind of ignored this, and so they began sailing across the Atlantic toward its destination. Now, here's an interesting story with the Lusitania. My professor, Dr. Reese was his name, he always had these theories, and I call them conspiracy theories, and he would always say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but, and he would follow it up with a conspiracy theory, but this is one of my favorite conspiracy theories that he had, and I'm going to pull up paint here to show you so I can draw it out. So my professor, Dr. Reese, stated that ships, when they were entering these unrestricted submarine zones, they would sail in serpentine motions. And when they're sailing in serpentine motions, what that's doing is that it's making it difficult for a torpedo to hit the ship. It's making it elusive. But he stated that whenever the Lusitania knew that it was in a submarine zone, instead of sailing in the serpentine motion, it sailed in a straight line, making itself an easy target. My professor stated, Dr. Reese stated, either that captain was completely incompetent, he said, or there was a reason behind this. He said there were authorities in England and authorities in America that wanted to join, or that wanted to America to enter in World War I. But it was President Wilson who was putting the kibosh on that. Well, it might have been that these authorities knew that the Lusitania would be sunk and had it sail in that straight line, causing Americans on board, there were about 128, to die, but hoping that it would anger America, causing America to want and declare war. Well, like I said, that's just a conspiracy theory. We don't know, but it's very interesting that the ship, instead of sailing in a serpentine motion, would sail in a straight line in submarine-infested waters. Well, the sinking of the Lusitania did anger Americans, but Wilson held his ground, and he said, we're still not joining. It wasn't until the capture of a telegram from Germany's foreign minister in Germany to the foreign minister in Mexico. This telegram, once it was captured, angered Americans, kind of being the tipping point, causing them to go to war. And let's read about this here. If we look on page 402, it says, when the German offensives in France slowed, Germany decided that the only way to win the war was to cut Britain's supply lines and force it to surrender. It could accomplish this goal only by using its large fleet of U-boats. The German government announced in February 1917 that it would resume unrestricted warfare, and the United States then broke off diplomatic relations with Germany. So we're taking one step closer to joining the Allied powers against Germany. Now, it said the tension caused by submarine warfare was heightened by the discovery of a German plot. Early in March 1917, the German foreign minister Arthur Zimmermann sent a telegram to the German minister in Mexico. In it, he said that if war broke out between Germany and the United States, Germany would reward Mexico for entering the war against the Americans, and it would help Mexico regain Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. This is huge. This is Germany basically telling Mexico, if you help us by keeping America busy and fighting a war with America, once we take over all of Europe, we'll help you regain all of that territory that America took from you in the Mexican cession. New Mexico, Arizona, Texas. So once we found the Zimmermann telegraph, otherwise known as the Zimmermann note, that kind of pushed us over the edge, and we ended up joining the war in 1917. And so those are some of the reasons for American interest and some of the reasons as to why we ended up joining the war. Now, I'm going to use the rest of our time here kind of giving you a little tutorial with Google Classroom, because I know it's difficult. It was difficult for me first starting out because I've kind of jumped into this head first. So I'm kind of going to go through some things with you, what to expect, where you can find certain things. With Google Classroom, so this is U.S. History first period. Okay, this right here, this is kind of like the home page. This is what we would call the stream page, okay, under the stream tab up here at the top. This is where I like to post announcements. This is also where you can find that I've posted a new assignment. Also, this is where you can find Chapter 20, the PowerPoint. I've uploaded it here. Then you can go to, if you want to look at your assignments in order, you can go to the Classwork tab up at the top. And what you'll find here, you'll see that I've started a topic, Chapter 20. And don't pay attention to this video lecture draft. This is only in my viewing as the teacher. You can see that I've posted assignments here, okay, with the video. I've also posted the reading assessment, and almost all of you have already done this, okay, but it lets me know who's turned it in and how many have been assigned to it. And then I'll be able to go in and look at your assessments after you're finished. So this is where you can find assignments. Now, if you were to click on this assignment right here, Video Lecture 1, let's go to the instruction page here. It'll say click on the link. I'll give you instructions for it, the day that it's supposed to be watched, the pages that it covers, and then which assignment you're supposed to do afterward. And then it'll also include the video here. Now, some of you, you told me you weren't able to watch the video, that it was blocked. And so that's okay. What I'm going to start doing is I'll also attach the actual link to YouTube so that you can just go, you can click on the link and it'll take you to YouTube and you can watch it there. I'm trying to think of anything else that I can cover with this. That was kind of just an elementary tutorial. You also have the upcoming assignments right here. Due today, in today's March 17th that I'm filming this, but you'll watch this lecture on the 18th. This shows you that due today at 11:59 p.m. So you have all today to watch that lecture. By the way, video lectures are not graded. It's just so that you have it on your assignments to give you kind of a structured guideline to keep up. I'm not grading you watching the video lectures, but it is helpful to me after you click finished or submit that I know that you've watched it. Also, the reading assignments, those are graded. The reading assessment that I had you do, that's what I should say, the reading assessments are graded. That's going to be a homework grade. And this past homework grade for reading assessment number 1, that covered pages 400 through 403. That would be a completion grade, just this once. If I don't do it as a completion grade, it's for accuracy. And I only have sometimes 2 or 3 questions, so that means that they can be worth a lot of points. For these homework assessments, you can use your book. It's basically like an open book quiz. So there really should not be any reason why you just blatantly miss one if it's in your book. And I try to word my questions as clearly as possible to prevent any confusion. So make sure that in the future reading assessments that you do use your book if you have to in order to answer those questions correctly, because that is a grade and I am checking for accuracy. But this reading assessment number 1, I am just taking a completion grade. All right. On Friday, you have a quiz that will cover Tuesday's lecture, Wednesday's lecture, which is this one, and then tomorrow's lecture, Thursday's lecture. So the quiz on Friday will cover those 3 lectures, the information covered in those lessons. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me. I will check my emails specifically around 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. Although if you I really try to keep up with my emails because I know you're putting in a lot of work watching these assignments and trying to get your work done. So I try to reward your effort by getting your emails responded to as fast as possible. Appreciate you guys. I'm actually out of time. So next lecture, we'll cover which videos were the most popular videos that you'll be watching during this quarantine. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see you next time.